Welcome to Spotlight on St. John's. I'm your host, Brian Brown. St. John's University is a unique Catholic and Vincentian institution of higher education, and St. John's University is on a mission to ensure student success. Today I had the chance to sit down with Dr. Simon Moller, Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs here at St. John's. Provost Moller is responsible for the creation and implementation of the academic priorities at St. John's University, as well as ensuring the quality of the educational programs here at St. John's. In addition, the Provost is responsible for the allocation of resources to support St. John's strategic priorities, and perhaps most importantly, to ensure the institution is able to recruit, retain, and mentor outstanding faculty. Let's watch. Provost Moller, thank you for stepping into the spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
The role of a provost at any college or university is a complex and complicated one. Even trying to define the word provost brings with it some interesting definitions. Everything from chief academic officer to mayor of a small town to even has its roots in prison keeper. Tell our audience what exactly is the role of a provost and what does a provost do?
Yes, it's an excellent question, and I get asked it many times, of course, and you've alluded to it already. The word provost in higher education started in Oxford in the medieval England. It has evolved slightly since then. But the role of a provost is really to be the chief academic officer, which means that you see all academic activities at a given university, such as St. John's. So it varies. It varies from making sure that academic programs are the right academic programs for our students. It deals with research activities and scholarly productivity by faculty. It involves faculty hiring. It involves student affairs, student life, how we engage our students. It involves talking to individual students. So the role is really quite varied, and no day is the same, right, which of course makes it so much more interesting.
Okay. And the responsibilities, how has the role expanded over time?
So I think the way a role of any provost has expanded over time really is aligned with how societies become more complicated. The world's become more complex, sure, and that means that our roles as provosts, including at St. John's, is becoming more complicated. That is not to say that it's complication doesn't mean it's negative. Right. It means it's more challenging. Sure. And with challenging to me means opportunities, not roadblocks. I think the way it has expanded is that you are more involved now in business decisions than before. Before, the role of a provost was sort of overseer of the more romantic academic sphere. Right. Right. Now you get involved in many different things.
You're in the weeds with budgeting, you're in the weeds with capital construction, with all sorts of things.
And it's a great opportunity to learn about the university and all different facets of a university. And I think you have to sort of know the facets to be an effective leader as a provost.
Now, if you had to prioritize, and there's a lot, you've already described a lot on your job description, what are the most important aspects of the job or the most important priorities for you?
The most important priority is student success. It is ensuring that we have the right academic programs for our students to ensure that they are successful whilst they are at St. John's and when they leave St. John's and pick up the career path that they have chosen or choose during their studies here. Right. And that really involves student engagement, involves experiential learning opportunities for students. How do they get the full package at St. John's? Because students are different, right, and we have to realize that. And it's making that configuration for individual students that really is the focus of what we do.
And you find that's going well here at St. John's?
It is. We still have work to be done.
Sure.
We can always become better. My favorite saying, like many other people say the same, if we do the same thing, we get the same outcome, and as the world is changing, we have to change with it.
And students are learning differently as well, so that involves adjustments.
Correct. Students, it's sort of odd, isn't it, that we become slightly mature and then we evolve into leadership roles and we think we know what students expect.
Right.
Of course, we have to ask the students what they expect and then we have to evolve with them.
And what do students expect today? Technology, the bells and whistles?
They expect technology. They expect the learning environment to be at least on par with the high school experience, if not better.
Right.
They expect things to be delivered in a format that they can understand and comprehend and are used to.
Right.
My own children, 9 and 10, or 9 and 11 actually, they do all the homework on iPads.
Sure.
They don't have notebooks anymore.
Right.
We didn't do that.
Right. And their textbooks are online and
Correct.
everything is
Correct.
digital.
Yes.
Describe your first experience, or how did you come to St. John's? Or
It was sort of by accident. My wife is from New York. We came here on vacation to visit family, and we came very often. And I tend to get bored on vacation. I like to do things. So I contacted the biology department here at St. John's and asked if I could give a seminar. And I did.
just out of the blue?
Out of the blue. Sent an email to the chair, and he said, sure, come and give a seminar. So I did that. Never been to St. John's before. Walked across a great lawn for the first time. Gave the seminar, and I said, look, I'm exploring opportunities. And the rest is history, as they say.
And when was that?
That was in 2010.
Okay. Now, you're a scientist by training.
Correct.
Could you speak to your interests, your career path?
Yes.
Kind of, how did you get where you are? Because I'm sure
Indeed.
growing up in Norway, I'm sure you didn't aspire to be a provost at a big, large American university, right?
No, not at all. That was never in the plans, really. You know, growing up in Norway, it's very nature-focused.
Okay.
I've always been fascinated by nature, that it's extremely ordered, but yet very unpredictable.
Okay.
And how every organism evolves into being what they are today. For instance, us two sitting here talking. It's amazing to me that we've developed into human beings that can have a reasonable conversation when we started from one cell that then developed in the correct form. But still many things can go wrong. So the complexity of it all has just always fascinated me. So I started out as a plant biologist, molecular biologist,
Okay.
trained as that in my Ph.D. and my postdoc. And then I transitioned later on to neurobiology, working on Parkinson's disease. And our lab is really interested in discovering ways to diagnose and try to understand how we can predict progression of this awful disease,
Right.
which is Parkinson's.
Right.
And we really discovered some really neat biomarkers that we're trying to bring to the public.
Now, you've gotten several patents already. I mean, you've been involved in this in a long time. Could you speak to, I guess, the progress you're making, or?
Yes, no, indeed. So we currently, if you have suspicions that you have Parkinson's, you will go to your primary care physician, and you might have some tremors in your right hand.
Right.
And they will say, well, you might have Parkinson's. Let's refer you to a neurologist. And you go to a neurologist, and they will do some very rudimentary and basic clinical observations.
Right.
Can you walk properly? Can you do this with your fingers properly? And so on and so forth. And then they will say, well, you might have Parkinson's. Here's some dopamine, and they send you on your merry way. And then you come back and say, well, the symptoms have sort of subsided a little bit. It's probably Parkinson's. There is about 50% misdiagnosis.
Really?
Which really is not a good thing for the patient and the caregivers. So we argued that we could probably find, or we hope we could find, some markers in blood. And through our collaborators in Norway, we have discovered several biomarker molecules, really interesting molecules in blood that we can screen for, and with extremely high efficiency and selectivity, we can now determine whether you have Parkinson's or not when you come with those primary symptoms.
Really? And that research is going on here as well as with partners in Norway?
It's partners in Norway, and a recent partner is New York Institute of Technology.
Wonderful.
But the work is going on here, yes,
Terrific.
with students and with both graduate and undergraduate students.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any timetable, if you had to guess, on the research and how soon, or is it too soon to tell?
No, we've published several articles already, and we've patented our discoveries before we published, of course.
All right.
And the plan is really to bring this to market. I think that would be good for St. John's.
Sure.
It's good for our students that have been involved.
Right.
And it's also good for the patients and the population. And that's what we really try to do through research. It's to effect positive change, to have an impact on somebody's life.
Sure. Now, one byproduct of any sort of research is the idea of mentoring. and student mentoring. Could you speak to that and how you approach mentoring and who was a mentor for you in your own life?
I've had many mentors. There's probably too many to mention, but my Ph.D. mentor, Michael McPherson from University of Leeds, he was really an inspiration. He worked very hard. He was reflective. He had a good life-work balance. And I had him since I was an undergraduate and all the way through my Ph.D. I think mentoring students is really fulfilling because you open the eyes of students. You can read things in the classroom, you can read things in books, but really having a hands-on experience to understand how hard it is and challenging it is to actually do research and having the grit to continue when things don't work.
Right.
So we have undergraduate students in my lab, we have high school students in my lab,
Yeah.
we have PhD students in my lab, master students, and that's really what makes the lab go around. It's not because of me.
Right.
I just set a direction and then I ask the right questions and then the students form their own questions and do the research.
But that is such an important part of the whole package, the whole learning process. It's the books, the classroom, the research, the mentoring, it's the whole thing.
It is, because students get engaged. And when they feel engaged, they are more likely to succeed. Going to a classroom, you know it, I know it. Going into class, you sit with many other students, you might have a couple of friends that you associate with, and then you leave the class. If you're involved in research, it brings an extra dimension to your educational experience. I think it's crucial. And we're doing more of that, and we'll continue to do more.
Now, I've heard you speak publicly about you're passionate about research, and I think you'd like to see more of it here. Is that part of your priorities as Provost?
It is, it is. Of course, we can define, or if we take one step back, you have very research-intensive universities that really are focused on research, and teaching is almost secondary.
Right.
Here, I like to see it as the other way around, but research is still part of the learning experience. So I think we have to become better to seek out grant opportunities, funding opportunities that will fuel the success of our students by allowing them to be integrated into the research setting and expand it, not just to life sciences, but the humanities, the social sciences, the professional studies. And we're doing an awful lot already, but I think we can do much, much more, and that's the plan for this year, to really dig deeper into the student engagement pathways that we have and make them more robust, more inviting, and have more students being involved.
From Norway to New York, that's a long way. Could you speak to, I guess, some of the differences between the post-secondary higher education experience in Norway and how it is over here?
Yes. Norway is a socialist country, which means that everything is paid for.
Right. And free education.
Free education all the way. You have to pay a semester fee, which is minimal.
Right.
So it's free. Here, of course, it's different.
Right. And scale is part of it. I mean, Norway has a population of about 5 million people.
Indeed. I mean, we're comparing apples and oranges.
Right.
I think the education system in the US is very good. My worry is that there's big differences between different schools.
Right.
And you really can't help where you're born and where you live.
Right.
So I think some equality in that system clearly would benefit everyone. I think at St. John's we do a really good job. We do a really good job of ensuring access to students that wouldn't maybe otherwise have access to an excellent Catholic private education, as we do here.
Right.
And that, of course, in turn drives student success and the transformation of lives,
Right.
and that's really what we do. And that's really why I haven't gone back to Norway. I love Norway.
Right.
I love my family in Norway.
Sure.
But I do believe and I hope that I can contribute, perhaps, to have a greater impact here on students and what we're trying to do.
Wonderful. What prepared you for this role as Provost?
I don't think you're ever prepared unless you've been a provost before.
Right.
It is daunting.
Right.
I have to admit, some mornings when I come in and sit in my chair, I think, should I really be here? Of course, I shouldn't admit this, but I'm rather honest and transparent. I think I've been prepared through being a chair and leading a research center in Norway,
Right.
building research center, meaning literally building it.
Right.
Not my own hands, but raising funds and orchestrating that constellation. And then being exposed here to various domains of central administration through the vice provost position, so on and so forth. I also have to say I have an excellent mentor. The president really is an amazing mentor and really cares about St. John's and how we conduct business. Right. And having interaction with him on almost a daily basis really leads me down this path of success, I think.
And I think one thing here under Dr. Gempis has been these strategic priorities. It's very clear for everyone,
right.
Student, faculty, administrator,
right.
anybody. You know what the strategic priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as everyone's kind of rowing in that same direction, the institution is moving forward.
It is. You know, it's like with anything. You cannot be very effective by yourself. Right. It requires a team effort. And I think that's one of the beauties of having strategic priorities that involves everyone. Right. So everybody knows what they are. Everybody knows what we have to do. And we have no choice. We have to do it. Right. And if we pull together as a team, we can get there. Right. So I think the transparency and inclusivity really goes a very long way to move an academic institution such as St. John's.
Sure. Now, we've spoken about some of the challenges, we raised some of them, but in higher education today in the United States, affordability, access, transparency, accountability, these are all big issues that not just presidents and provosts, but deans, policymakers are dealing with. What do you think, or if you had to prioritize them, where do they come out on top?
It's access and success really are some of the primary objectives. Do we provide access to the students that will ultimately succeed at St. John's? I think also the value proposition.
It's a big issue.
It is a very big issue, and I understand parents that say, is it worth it? I would argue education is always worth it. Right. Always.
And all the statistics support the more you learn, the more you earn in terms of career growth, and earnings, and that type of thing. But there really is a value proposition. Is it worth it? And that's a big issue today.
It is, but I think it's our job to put together the package deal, not for a student population, but for individual students, so that you can see as a student what the value is for you. I think that is where some universities aren't good enough. We still have work to do, but I think we do provide a very clear value proposition for students. We are grounded in our mission. We provide education that is well-rounded, but yet specialized enough, and our statistics show that more than 94% of our graduating students obtain a job that they want within 6 months or go to graduate school. Right. So we are going in the right direction, but we also have to capture those last 6%. So our job isn't done yet. But the value proposition is a tough one, but it comes down to us being proactive and understanding what our students need and then deliver on that promise.
Across the United States, students arrive at college campuses, some not quite prepared. What can high schools or even primary schools do better, learning with the latest technology, adjusting to new pedagogy to prepare students for higher education?
You raise a very good point. And again, I think there is a lot we have to do. And I say we because we have to do it together. I think we have to work more closely with high schools. But I think, as you mentioned in your question, it goes before that as well. I think we're doing an ill service to our students if we expect them to go through high school, and then when they finish high school, now you go to college, and it's going to be the same. Right. No, you're left a little bit more by yourself at college, and it can be culture shock. But I think having those dialogues with the schools, understanding their curriculum, understanding how we can maybe cross over our courses, and we do that already, of course, through the College Advantage program. But
this
we
is
can
where
do
high
more.
school students take classes, St. John's approved college classes, and they get St. John's credit that they can apply if they come to St. John's or if they go to another school.
Correct. But having, you know, summer programs to expose incoming students, or even students that perhaps are not in their senior year at high school, to understand a little bit more what the flavor is of being at a university and what they can expect. I was scared on day one. I'm sure you were too.
Sure.
And I'm sure many students have the same feeling when they come to St. John's. But we have many good programs that ease students into to their new life here.
Yeah, and that's an important part, because it is an adjustment, especially that first year, that first semester. And to your earlier point, sometimes if you're born into the wrong zip code or born into the wrong school district, sometimes you have an inherent disadvantage in terms of your educational growth and process. And higher education is kind of helps to level that playing field. And if it provides that boost up, it's in the long run a good thing.
Yes, no, it is. And we do have differentiated programs for different populations of students, and we recognize that. And I think that's terribly, terribly important.
Well said. I want to talk about St. John's in particular. What sort of vibe, or what attracts you most, I guess, about the mission, the Catholic Vincentian mission, the students, the great diversity of students that we have, our urban location, access to the big city? Like, what, if you had to identify one or two things, what charges you the most?
Your questions are hard. I would say all of the above, but if I have to rank them, which of course often we have to do.
Rankings are so important.
Rankings are important, yes. I think it's the students. I really think it's the students. Actually, I don't think it's the students, it is the students. It is seeing students, and I cannot wait for the first day of fall semester, I have to say. Seeing students walk across a Great Lawn, seeing students when you walk from a meeting to another, and seeing their excitement, their hope. And having taught here at St. John's, seeing the stamina that they have, the zeal for service, to do something, not just for themselves, but for their fellow students, their fellow citizens. All the service activities that students are involved in, faculty and administrators and staff. That package, to me, it's almost like we are an oasis in a rather sort of modern Wild West, where we really try to maintain and put our arms around this very special mission we have at St. John's. So it is the students. It makes me smile every time I think about students. And as I said, I can't wait for the start of the fall semester.
First day of school is always a great day, as is commencement, which is really the culmination of not just all the work faculty, students, mentors put in behind the scenes, but the parents, the families, many first generation students that we have, first in their family to go to college, may not speak English at home. To me, that is like the first day of school and commencement are really kind of the great tipping point of what we do and what our mission is about.
No, it is. And I'm glad you mentioned commencement. That week is quite long. It's
everybody.
I think it's 7 days in a row. But what a happy week it is to see students that you might have seen 2 years before, or maybe only a month before, or maybe at the start of the educational journey they had here at St. John's, and seeing them walk across the stage. And it's just an amazing feeling, because that's really why we're here. That is, as you said, that is the end game. And when they walk across and their families, and it's special. And
you earn that degree, can never be taken away from you.
You have it forever.
Exactly.
And that's why when I was teaching and I'm still mentoring, I instill in students, don't put things off until tomorrow. Do it today, and do it as well as you can, and don't assume that anything is boring, and always learn something. Because when you get that certificate, that diploma, it's there for life.
That is true. When you speak to alumni of St. John's, and we have almost 150 years worth of alumni, what resonates, or what is the common theme? What do you hear most when you speak to alumni?
The common theme is the excellent education they received at St. John's, coupled with the fact that it wasn't always easy. Many alumni worked a job or two jobs, doing part-time studies, given a scholarship, so given the chance to prove themselves. having excellent professors that would guide them through the educational pathway, and then graduating and going on and having a family and having a job, and then coming back. And you just see, you can sense it, the joy when they get together.
Right.
Not just because they haven't seen each other for maybe a year or two or a month or a week.
Right.
It's the joy of coming back here, to relive the experience they had here. Albeit very hard perhaps in some cases,
Sure.
but the joy of coming back and saying, I went to St. John's and how can I now help?
Right.
And be involved. That is something very special about our alumni.
Agreed. And as an alumni, I can chime in with some authority on that. And I think there is that commonality, and you spoke to it. It's the hard work. It's maybe obstacles, overcame some obstacles to achieve success, but everybody else was kind of in that same boat. And I think that there is that, common bond that a St. John's experience exists.
Yes, no, indeed.
Now, the provost always addresses new faculty at the new faculty convocation at the start of the academic year, which is a great, encouraging event. But what would your message to all faculty be, whether new or long tenured, long serving? What message do you want to deliver to faculty?
I think the message would be that we all are privileged to have this opportunity to have an impact on young minds and our students. I cannot think of any other job, if you can think of one, you have to tell me, any other job that gives so much satisfaction to see that we are transforming lives every day. And the message is really, let's engage with our students. Let's engage more with our students. Let's understand what our students really need and what they want out of the 4 years at St. John's and beyond. How can we be of assistance? So I think student engagement is really at the top of my mind right now. We know that students come in different flavors. We have to accommodate 4 different types of students.
Right.
But we can do that. We can do that. But it really is. It's a privilege to be here. We have really our main priority is to ensure that our students are successful, and that means engaging with our students and having the right academic programs. So let's not be stagnant.
Right.
What worked this semester might not work next semester. So let's be proactive, let's be intentional and do it together.
That's a good message. And engagement is critical, and it's not just in the 4 walls of the classroom. It's in the office hours, it's in the lab, it's in the mentoring, it's in stopping, maybe talking to a student in the hallway or helping them with advisement or that type of thing. And I think, to your point, it is a privilege, what we do, but stepping outside, I guess, the comfort zone and really diving in and meeting students where they are is critical.
Totally agreed, totally agreed. And as with everything, we have work to do. Really have some excellent faculty at St. John's that really care about our students. And that comes back to an earlier point we were talking about. I think faculty here are extraordinary.
Right.
Really extraordinary. They care so much about our students, individual students.
Right.
And you hear the stories, and I get emails from students that thank me on behalf of faculty.
Wow.
And that really speaks volumes, I think, of who we are and our mission and what we're trying to do every day.
And that mission, again, almost 150 years old, hasn't changed.
Correct.
Many different schools evolve and that
Mm-hmm.
type of thing, but St. John's has always been that opportunity school, that first-generation immigrant school, that hard-working, blue-collar type of student who can go and do anything after.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. The sky's the limit. I really do believe that.